Tell this is simply a story because of how this is described, okay? That's as I tell you, you'll figure it out. So this young man noticed an invisible puka trotting on by him in the fields. So that's number one, right? I can't get my son to answer me when I'm like yelling his name from 4 feet away and then texting him while staring at him. I blame SpongeBob for all that mess. Is that still a thing? I don't know. Anyway, Patrick noticed this creature walking by and called out to it, offering his coat. Mind you, it was invisible. Well, the puka was so overjoyed that the young man was willing to be so charitable that it took his coat, and it told the young man that it would help him out with his chores around the farm. Every night, the puka would secretly come to the barn, sometimes with its puka buddies, and they would mill all the corn there into flour. Sometimes, Patrick would sneak into the barn and nap in hopes of catching sight of the puka party. Eventually, the boy gave the puka a suit made of fine silk, and the puka used it to see the world, because as we all know, as soon as you get that sick suit, you want to show everybody. The puka ended up bouncing to travel the world in his sick new threads, but the farmer was so loaded at this point, it didn't even matter. Patrick ended up going to a great school, and he got all smartened up and stuff, and he met an amazing young Irish lass, and he got married. The puka ended up showing up to the young man's wedding, and he brought him an amazing present. It brought Patrick and his bride a golden cup that had a magical liquid inside of it. The liquid would ensure the happiness of anyone who drank it, and boy oh boy, was that one heck of a present. Sometimes it's also been known to intervene and prevent terrible accidents from happening, so there's that as well. Who knows if it's benevolent or if it's evil? Maybe it depends on the person, If you're a bad dude, bad things happen. If you're an observant, nice kid with some silk lying around to make a sweet soup, you're going to get some magic liquid. I wonder how the Cluricon feels about this magic liquid.
A tree?
Huh. Anyway. And finally, Old Reliable. Well, kind of. The last one is an actual cryptid monster that some have legitimately seen. So there's an Irish word that's gruagach, which can mean magician, giant, or ogre. But actually, this means the hairy one, or at least that's according to Nick Redfern's The Bigfoot book. And again, I apologize for calling this a gruagach. If you can hear me, Grua guy, please don't come to my house and crush me. But this cryptid is actually known as Ireland's very own Bigfoot anyway. It's fairly similar to the one that we all know and love, but there are some discernible differences from its American counterpart. The biggest difference, of course, is its size. Unlike its larger hulking cousin, the gruagach is more human-sized. By that, I mean it's a bit slighter than its iron-pumping compadre. It's also been said to have a bit of a smaller, flat face with an upturned nose and a protruding brow ridge. It's been called piggish, but I'm pretty sure if I called it piggish, again, I mean, I've already had a Snallygaster in here. I don't need one of these guys, too. Either way, it's very similar to the look of a Neanderthal, much more than that of the traditional hairy, big man, like Bigfoot, or the Yeti, or Bat Squatch, Sheep Squatch. He looks like a sheep, whatever. What's really interesting about the gruagach is the fact that unlike most places around the world where these kind of creatures are predominant, Ireland isn't really known for being a very forested region. It's known for its bogs and its lochs, and honestly, only about 1% of it is covered by forest. The most forest there happens to be in the county Wicklow, and of course, with forests comes great responsibility, along with at least one gruagach sighting. I mean, that's pretty interesting, though, right? In the county that has the least amount of forests, there hasn't been any sightings. So, I mean, I know that sounds like it's one of those, like, duh moments, but if you think about it, I mean, it makes sense, right? And one of the other cool things is there's actually been some fairly recent sightings of these creatures as well. In 2016, a woman was walking her dogs through the forest near Slievenera Forest. Again, sorry. I also said forest twice, huh? Her dogs started getting weird, so of course she started snapping some pictures because that's what you do when you're scared, right? When she got home, she reviewed them and she noticed that in one of the pictures, there was something walking through the shot. In the picture, it's weird. It looks fairly light out. And this thing, I think it would be pretty easily seen. But, I mean, honestly, one really can't say until they're in that situation and they're trying to figure out what's going on. But, honestly, to be fair anyway, the picture really looks like somebody just kind of walking in a ghillie suit. Like, really similar to a ghillie suit. But, I mean, who knows, right? About a year later, someone else had an experience which may lend some proof to this. A nature photographer and her husband were taking their dog for a walk when they suddenly heard a strange, loud howling noise. Of course, their dog started barking back at the noise, but then it stopped. A few seconds later, it popped up again, but it was in a different location. The dog barked and it stopped. Guess what? Happened again. A couple seconds later in a different location. So it kept getting closer and closer to these people. And eventually it just stopped and stopped. But eventually she decided that it would be best to leave, and she did exactly that. Eventually she came back with a smaller dog, and she didn't hear any noises, but as she was walking, she saw there were some trees knocked into X's across the path. Also, this is very ominous. Her dog lost its ball, and they couldn't find it anywhere. What a Richard. The thing took the poor dog's ball. How do I know that? Because the next day they came back, and there it was, right in the middle of the path. And again, this all seems coincidental and easy to explain, right? The old misidentification answer, eh? Well, guess what? There was another reported sighting. Yeah. This time, a woman and her husband were walking yet another dog in the Alivanora forest when they came across a person huddled next to the trail. Well, the dogs got mad and they started barking. This creature then raised its head and it showed that it wasn't actually a human. But it was something else, right? Possibly a gruagach. Either way, the lady's husband approached it like any intelligent man would do, and the thing stood up. She said when it stood up, it was about 8 feet tall with lanky arms, and it was carrying a big stick. Of course it was carrying a big stick. Well, it got mad, and it smacked the stick against the nearby tree, and then Usain bolted off into the woods. Later that year, another man claims to have seen a creature that was very similar to this in the same area. So these sightings have actually popped up all over Ireland and England. I mean, it's a Bigfoot, right? It sounds like a Bigfoot, a different kind of Bigfoot. But either way, the gruagach really likes to travel. So there have been some random videos seen, but of course they're mostly circumstantial and dismissed by most. But they've been spotted in different parts of northern, southern Ireland, and also in parts of England. But as I always say, why is it so hard to believe that there may be bipedal primates that have survived and live in the wilderness? A guy told me once that they were animals. They would be too stupid to stay hidden this long. I laughed. This was coming from a guy that's a member of a species that considers Tide Pods to be a good snack. You know, there isn't a ton of evidence to support that the gruagach is real, but like most that see things like this, that personal experience that they have is good enough. Of course, some always explain these away as hoaxes and such as the first modern sighting, and it probably was just that. It's just a guy in a ghillie suit, but there are a few others that seem much more realistic. They have actually found the skull of an ape in Ireland as well. There's evidence to suggest that apes were brought to Ireland way back in the day, and who knows, maybe some of them survived. I don't think there's any kind of stretch to that. They don't have to be animals that build like treetop skyscrapers and underground trains. It's not a Planet of the Apes. It's simply a species of ape that's managed to go virtually undetected through the ages, and they've learned to live beyond the reach of Tide Pod eaters. I'd say that's a pretty fair possibility, but honestly, as usual, no one really knows. What I do know, though, is that Ireland has some amazing folklore and legends, and perhaps some other creatures that are steeped in reality. There's so much more to go into as well, but these are just a couple of my favorites. You know, I did debate, though, about putting in the Salmon of Knowledge on the list, but I ended up deciding against it. You should Google it, though. Actually, you know what? Check out the blog. Maybe it'll magically appear on there. Magically. Who knows? Magic. I don't know. But make sure to head on over to the website at some point in the next week or so and check out the blog. Head to monstersandfriends.wordpress.com and see some more Irish lore, namely the Salmon of Knowledge. Also, let me know if there's any other great Irish legends that you know and love. Head on over to the Twitterverse and give us a follow at MNFPod and let us know your favorites. You can also find us on Instagram at Monsters and Freds or on the Facebook. Just search for the Monsters and Friends podcast and bam, there we are. But of course, as always, the best thing to do is to find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or even Spotify. Make sure that you subscribe on there and please, 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 please give us a review. I'll tell you what, if you leave a ranking, a rating, and a review, screenshot it and tweet it at me. Or you can DM it to me and I'll go ahead and send you a small token of our appreciation. We absolutely love and appreciate our listeners, and if you can give us a little bit of help, that would be wonderful. Also, next week is going to be a dark week for us. We're packing up the wagon and heading south for some fun in the sun, and I'm going to try to find the skunk ape. I think that'll actually be kind of fun. I don't know how Mrs. Patrick feels about that, but we'll figure that out, right? Also, I want to apologize to Adam at Graveyard Tales for Snally. Apparently she's really moody, but I guess we all have our days, right? And on this Irishest of weeks, may the sun shine all day long, everything go right and nothing wrong. May those you love bring back love to you, and may all the wishes you wish come true. Thanks so much for stopping by the cabin, and we'll chat again real soon.